It's really interesting what you said regarding the dominance overlay between Bitcoin dominance and ETH dominance. And I need to get a view of that chart.
I mean, if you want me to share my screen, I can show it to you.
Yeah. So really interesting. You brought that up, and the similarity to this point during the bear market in 2018, you pointed out, and if you could help me visualize that. But the reason, Ben, I've been really thinking that the structural top occurred in April up until this week. And when I view this through the monetary base, the top was in November. So now I'm pivoting back to, oh, wait, even though there are a lot of different reasons that you might think the structural top occurred back in April, May of 2021, maybe not. And if we're only at the point of the bear market you're talking about in relation to 2018, there could be significant further, not only downside, but move into Bitcoin.
And let me explain. Yeah, like that's where I keep going back and forth too. Honestly, like 1 week I find myself looking at it from April, and then the next week I'm like, maybe it's better to look at it from November.
Yeah.
Like look at this move right here with regards to Ether's dominance and Bitcoin's dominance. So the one on the this one here is Bitcoin's dominance, and then the blue line is Ether's dominance. Look at where in 2018 Ethereum dominance came right back up to that 20 to 21% level before then falling off a cliff, right? And during that same time, look where Bitcoin's dominance came back to. It touched 40%, right when Ethereum's dominance went back up to the top. So you sort of had, the Ethereum dominance have this last hurrah, which again, even if you look at the bottom here before that last bounce, it sort of did at the same time this time too, right? Like, and it's made that same exact move. And I find myself looking at this chart and being like I want to buy Ether. I want to be bullish on it. But how do I look at this chart and say there's a huge risk of what if it plays out the exact same way, and it comes down? And I don't know what it could be. I don't know what would cause it to do that. I don't know whether it could be like a bug with the merge. I'm not saying there is one, and I hope it goes off without I hope it goes off swimmingly and there's no issues. But you never really know what could occur. There's another chart I think is really interesting. And one thing to remember about this chart with the Bitcoin dominance is that it includes stablecoins, right? So we also know that the stablecoin dominance has gone up a lot since 2018. So we have to account for that. This is a really interesting chart. Let me pull this up. Can you see this?
Perfect. Yeah.
Look at this chart, excludes stablecoins from the Bitcoin dominance. It's the orange line. So the Bitcoin dominance is the orange line without stablecoins. It's just putting in lower highs, but it's also putting in higher lows, right? Like you can see in 2018, a low, and then it's been putting in higher lows for all of 2021 and 2022 now. So while Bitcoin's dominance, including stablecoins, actually put in a lower low, just last week, when you exclude stablecoins from the calculation, it's actually moving. It's actually just been putting higher lows in all year. And so I'm thinking that what if this is the phase that we're at, where the dominance of Bitcoin, not including stablecoins and including stablecoins, is about to shoot up a lot. And one of the ways it can shoot up, as you know, is not just because Bitcoin USD goes down. It could be because Bitcoin pumps, for a while. And that's actually what happened in late 2018. Bitcoin pumped a few times, and it was during those pumps, it would pump and then come back down and then pump back up and then come back down. And every time it did that, all Bitcoin valuations just kept bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. Because actually by December, when the bottom fell out of the entire market, the dominance was actually going up by that point. And then it started the dominance of Bitcoin was going down, or sort of remaining somewhat flat by the actual final capitulation. And it wasn't until that rally in 2019 that the dominance started to really go back up again. But that's my main concern, I think, for Ether Bitcoin right now is, I know a lot of people are sort of pushing the narrative that Bitcoin is worthless and that Ethereum is now going to be sort of the thing that carries the asset class. And I will say this. I mean, it is possible that eventually Ethereum does flip Bitcoin. I'm not going to say that can't happen. It could happen. Ethereum could become incredibly large, and who knows what's going to happen 5 or 10 years from now or 20 years from now, right? There's no way to know what's going to happen that far away. But in the short term, it does seem eerily similar to similar narratives we've heard before, right? Like Bitcoin is useless. Like Ethereum is going to be the only thing that matters, that kind of stuff. And these narratives are happening at the same point in the Ethereum dominance as they did in 2018. So if you're right about it, because you said, what if we measure it from November's top, right?
Yeah.
Right. Look at this chart. I'm going to show you a chart. If you look at the ROI from the cycle peak of Bitcoin this cycle, we are at the exact same point, the green line, the exact same point in the bear market we were at in 2014 and in 2018. And it was in the same area in 2018 that the dominance shot up a lot, in the same area. So that's my main concern with the Bitcoin dominance. I've also sort of flirted, or the Ethereum dominance. I mean, I've also sort of flirted with the idea of what if Bitcoin has bottomed, but the altcoin market hasn't, right? Like, is that a possibility? Like, could that have happened? I don't think it's the most likely scenario, but it is something worth considering. And I think the main reason it's worth considering is because there are at least there's a lot of charts that show that, you know, Bitcoin is at historic lows, right? Like it in terms of some of these indicators flashing for the first time in a long time. And, you know, if you look at like the regression curve, it's pretty low on the regression curve. But one of the things that I think we should look at is the 1-year ROI. This one. You know, right now it's sitting at 0.497. Historically, it bottoms at 0.2, right? Around 0.2 or so. When's the best time for that to occur? 1 year after November, right? Like, you know, so I don't know. I mean, like, I want to be bullish. I want to, you know, say it's just only up. But I mean, I look at these charts, and even like the one you presented on monetary debate. I mean, if the Fed's not playing ball, then we could see another low. And I mean, it's certainly possible. And if for instance, if you were to like do a future projection on the Bitcoin price and say, like, let's say in December 13th or December 13th, let's say the price is $13,000, it'll show you the 1-year ROI is getting to those same capitulation levels that it has in the past in prior bear markets, right? So these are the sort of like the final charts that are holding out that haven't put in a bottom.
I mean, three thoughts to build off all of that. And
Sure.
I mean, on the upside also, this didn't hit the historical levels where we would see, you know,
look,
Bitcoin
draw a trend line between these peaks right here. And you can see that it's just diminishing returns.
Lower. Yeah, it's diminishing returns.
It's just diminishing returns.
Yeah.
And that was honestly, so if you, back in April, I was very bearish on Bitcoin. I had sold a lot of my, in April of 2021, I sold most of my Bitcoin, even though I believed in lengthening cycles. I said, I don't think it's going to go up much higher before we have a capitulation first. And the reason was because the risk level on Bitcoin was at the highest risk band. Like, I mean, it was, the risk was way too high. And I was not convinced we were going to be able to go put in a new high without going down first. And then we did go down. I started to reaccumulate. We went back up. I got really excited. And then I was like, that's it. You know, like, wait, where's the rest of it? You know, where's the rest of the move?
So I think that's where it becomes an advantage at looking at past behavior and what happened in so much as even the timing of when we did peak out in the fourth quarter of 2021. Like, that was, I mean, granted, it was significantly diminished from where it was expected, but that was the area where, you know, whether you're measuring from how many days after the halving, the last cycle had peaked out, and knowing where something's different is almost as much of an advantage as seeing the similarities of past behavior play out. So looking at that Bitcoin Ethereum dominance chart, is there a way to tell when actually something would be different, where we could say, oh, well, actually we are looking at a new dynamic? And the reason I know it is because of viewing this.
I mean, I think if we haven't seen any type of change in behavior in the dominance by the end of the year, I mean, it's only 3 months from now, right? Like, it's not that much further away. If we still haven't seen a change in behavior, then I think we have to say fundamentally something is different. Like,
yeah, you know, and that might also mean not only Ethereum, but that might also entail the general alt market for the time being, right? And then again, how far?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and too, like, you know, I mean, there's a chance that Ethereum dominance could go down, but Ether USD goes up, right? Maybe Bitcoin just outperforms it for a few months, right? I mean, there's no I want to be clear when I talk about it. I'm not always talking about USD pairs. I'm just thinking with respect to Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin needs to do something a little bit more exciting than just be in a downtrend for the entire market to be healthy.
Have you looked at Bitcoin dominance with ETH removed, or is that disingenuous?
I don't think I have that chart on my I don't have that chart on my website, not where I include Bitcoin and exclude stable coins and Ethereum, but it is, I believe it's also putting in, I think it's even more bullish. I mean, I think the reason that the dominance with stablecoins looks so bad right now is mainly because of Ethereum. If you look at most other alt Bitcoin pairs, like you look at like Solana Bitcoin, Avalanche Bitcoin, ADA Bitcoin, a lot of these alt Bitcoin pairs are just down a lot this year. I mean, I know they've had local bounces recently, but they also had bounces in 2018 too.
What type of probability would you attribute things like Cardano actually taking out their all-time high in the next cycle?
It's a tough question. That I think a lot of them probably will. Like I think Cardano probably will take out its all-time high. But look, a lot of layer ones are not going to, like, because there's always a new flavor for the next cycle, right? Like if you think back to like 2015, there were a ton of altcoins back then that that are no longer around. No one cares about them anymore. And there was a new flavor of the day. Like, I mean, think back to this cycle, Solana and Avalanche, they weren't around for the last bull market.
Events. Yeah.
Yeah. There's probably going to be a few altcoin projects that pop. I'm going to say this now, right? Like there's probably going to be a few altcoin projects that pop up in 6 to 12 months. And why? Because the people are building them now in preparation for the next bull market, and they'll launch them and they'll probably do well. And the reason they don't launch them in the bear market is because, during the middle of the bear market, like say like 3 months ago or something, everyone is still sort of just living off chasing the trend of the last bull market, not innovating for the next one. At the beginning in the bear market, you get developers that actually innovate, they create new projects that do really well. And then halfway through the bull market, you get all these copycat projects that show up that just copy the code from these other ones and they chase the trend. That's only sustainable for so long. So yeah, I think some of them will. I think Cardano probably can hit a new all-time high. And maybe a few of the others, but I always do wonder, there's going to be some that don't. I mean, again, there's always a lot of altcoins that never go on to hit new all-time highs. And the only reason we don't talk about them, I think, is because of survivorship bias. We don't remember them anymore. We don't think about them anymore. Think back to 2018. You had so many coins, EOS, right? Monero, Dash, Nano. Like think about all the coins that went way up, and then you never really hear much about them anymore because they just sort of fizzled out. And you're likely going to see that same thing happen the next cycle too. And I think this is the main point is Bitcoin and ETH is where you have to start with a crypto portfolio, because those are the ones that are most likely to actually hit new all-time highs. I mean, like, gosh, I know it's a tough call because there's always this like little bird, there's like the little thing in the back of my head that says, well, what if Ethereum just goes back up to like, 10% of Bitcoin's valuation or 15% Bitcoin's valuation or something like it did back in 2017? Like, what if that occurs? I think that it's not the most likely short-term scenario. I'm thinking that the most likely scenario is that there's probably still going to be a lot of volatility on Ethereum for weeks to come, and it's going to pop a lot, against Bitcoin and stuff here and there. But I think we're slowly seeing the the momentum head back the other way for a while. That's my gut. I mean, again, I could easily be wrong about that. I get things wrong. But that's what my gut says. And because of that, I'm lighter on Ethereum than I was earlier, like, last year and the year before. I've just been much slower. And by the way, with respect to Cardano, you asked me about that one. That was one I accumulated back in 2019 and 2020, but I have not bought it at all this year. I just, I don't think I think it's going to do well.
How was your exit on that? I mean,
honestly, most of my exit for a lot of these things happened in early 2021. Like, I was tracking all my trades back then, and all of these altcoins and Bitcoin as well, they were all hitting the high risk bands in early 2021. So I mean, I was buying ADA at 2 cents, and I remember taking profits on it, you know, between $1 to $2, and then everyone gave me a hard time about it for like half a year because then it went to $3, you know. But it's like when you're the person that buys it at 2 cents, you don't care so much if you sell it at $1.50 or $2.50, you know, like you're already up so much that you just want to make sure you lock in those profits, right?
And it worked out, in hindsight, it worked out to be really
right.
smart.
But
the Fed never pivoted, maybe we would have seen a much bigger actually blow off top in the whole market, right?
But I didn't sell it. So I sold some ADA in early 2021, but I did not sell any in late 2021. So like basically whatever I was going to sell, I had already sold. And if it had gone higher, like if we had a lengthened cycle, then I would have sold more, but we didn't get it. And so I did exit a lot of altcoins in Q1 of this year. I exited one or two in Q4 of 2021 when I just didn't think they had any more momentum left in them. And then I exited out of most of my other ones at in Q1.
Yeah, I could have done much better around that time. I mean, for me, I saw the Fed pivot coming. I saw the technical.
I know. I mean, I even had you on my channel. You were talking about it, and I'm like, Jordan. You know, Jordan was talking about, you know, the Fed pivot and whatnot. And I think like we both wanted it to go to 100K.
Yeah, totally. And all I did, Ben, all I did was take paper profits, and all I did was de-risk down my pay. But I didn't like. If I would have known, I could have significantly reduced my Bitcoin.
This is the thing. Like, how do we? I think this is a lesson for the next cycle. Like, you should never get too attached to a number. More so the timing is probably the timing of when things change is a lot more significant than the actual number at which it occurs.
Yeah,
you know. I think you nailed it. I mean, with regards to the actual pivot, you know, I think you were on my channel. I don't remember when. It was sometime in 2021. And I remember you saying, you know, like, well, the Fed's going to pivot in 2022, and you know, like risk assets won't do well, right? And I think that it became this thing for a lot of people that we were sort of just thinking like, okay, well, it still has to get to 100K, right? Like before they, you know, before it comes back down.
At the time, people were almost indignant. They're like, there's no way the Fed could taper. There's no way they could raise rates. And it was almost like, you can't even have this discussion. And it's, I'm sure you've been able to maneuver you know, when you all of a sudden put yourself out there in public, and then you're dealing with the public feedback, that's a new dynamic that needs to go into your own, the way that you view the market. And it's takes.
Well, I put a video out on my channel in February saying like, cash is king, altcoins are risky.
People hated you.
and yeah, people hated me. Well, especially then, because they just rallied until late March before they started coming back down. And then I continued to remind people of it in April and May and June. And then of course, then they rallied again. I don't know. I think that the biggest question mark to me is what happens to ETH after the merge is sort of the biggest thing. If it goes down, then it's doing the exact same thing it did this last cycle. Right? Like the exact same thing, hitting the same dominance level, everyone going to the same narrative of Bitcoin is useless, doing the exact same thing. If something else happens,
a successful merge, and this current rally continues for however long,
right? My
expectations are that Ethereum is going to perform well, right?
It could. I mean, I don't think it's going to go to a new high this year, but I mean, it could go up. But
seeing what you presented, and in the light you presented, and now me like, oh wait, November was actually maybe the actual structural top here, that has me thinking that, well, there's a lot of credence to what Ben is saying. And you know,
let me be clear about something though. I thought Ether Bitcoin was done already. So I want to you know, show you what I mean. So what I did, for full disclosure, is I traded some ETH to Bitcoin right here. And I put out an alert on my channel, on the private channel, saying, all right, I'm trading 1/3 of my Ether to Bitcoin at 0.0749. And then it tanked like a rock, and I felt like a genius, you know? And then it came straight back up, you know, like, I'm like, dang, man, like it came straight back up. But here's the thing that I keep looking at, Jordan, and I I don't want to spread unnecessary FUD. I don't want to be that guy, because I mean, again, what does history show us? It's that more times than not, the people that are optimistic are right? Like, oh, more times than
I
not.
agree. The markets are not crashing, right?
Yeah, like more times than not, the optimists are right. So this is not something that you should take to the bank.
Right.
Because again, they're not going to cash it in. But look at Ethereum's. You remember Bitcoin USD in 2021, right? Like the Wyckoff distribution.
Yeah.
Look at this.
I mean,
look at this chart right here. So this is Bitcoin. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Wyckoff distribution. Then you have the secondary distribution phase, right? On Bitcoin USD. Now look at that chart, and now look at this one. Look at Ether Bitcoin. It's the same thing.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Look, 1, 3, 4, and then the secondary distribution phase. 1, 2.
Wow.
This is what I'm concerned about. And this is what I mean, it's sort of like people who, there were a lot of bears. If you remember, there were a lot of bears back in summer 2021, a lot. And a lot of them were calling for much lower prices. They were calling for 10K back then. And in hindsight, like, I probably should have been more bearish as well. The only reason I wasn't was because I was still operating under the, you know, the idea that we would ultimately have a much longer cycle, and therefore I had to go up. And it did go up. So I ended up being right, but I think for the wrong reasons. But if you look at this, it's the exact same chart that Bitcoin USD did in 2021. It's just, this is the Ether Bitcoin chart. You have the distribution phase, you have it come down. I remember back in June, I thought to myself, what happens if we get a secondary distribution phase just like Bitcoin? And I dismissed it. I was like, nah, it's not going to happen. Like, we're in a bear market. There's no way Ether Bitcoin is going to go back up to these levels. And that's exactly what it did. And I should have thought about it, because that's what it did in 2018 too. After the bear market started, it then rallied back up to 20%, 21% ETH dominance. And then it came back down. But I look at this chart and I say, is this not the same thing?
It is.
That Bitcoin USD did in 2021.
It is. You have to go back to the cross chart though. And, you know, the thing is that it's as clear as day what you're pointing out. And I want to add to it though, looking at
another way to look at Ether, look at the market cap. A lot of people look just at the Ether Bitcoin valuation, right? But look at Ether's market cap divided by Bitcoin's market cap. Because remember, supply is not constant here. So that's something to consider. The Ether market cap divided by Bitcoin market cap is getting into the same resistance levels that it was back over here. Now, technically, it did go higher over here, but this was way before. I mean, there's not hardly any altcoins, right? I mean, this was way early. I look at this and I think that and you know, it's funny. I had this chart. I had this line on my chart for over a year, and I stopped looking at it, and it bounced exactly off the line. I didn't think it was going to bounce though. Like, I didn't. I thought it was gonna keep going down, but I do sort of wonder if this is just not the secondary distribution phase of the Ether Bitcoin valuation. And then one more thing. I know I'm getting on a tangent here, but I just wanna bring it home on this last point. And this is the reason I think Bitcoin USD is about to outperform Ether, is because if you look at the regression bands for Bitcoin's already back in it, right? Like, well in it. I think it's already had. I think Bitcoin has either bottomed or it's much closer to whatever its bottom is going to be than Ethereum, right? So if you look at Bitcoin USD, looks like a fairly clean cycle, right? I mean, it came up, it came back down. But look at Ether USD on the same idea, right? The same type of like regression band stuff. Mm-hmm. It still seems like it could have, it still seems like it could have that final plunge, right? Like into the depths of the regression band, which, by the way, if it did this, how does that work? Like, how does that work? Well, if the Bitcoin dominance goes up while Bitcoin goes sideways and everything else crashes, then Ether USD could go down while Bitcoin stays at 20K. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's a somewhat convoluted theory, and admittedly, for the last 2 to 3 months, it has not been working out the way I thought it was going to. But I think we're finally getting to the point where it's going to start going in the direction I think.
I mean, the only reason, right, and I see all that, and the only reason there was like a little bit of a twist in what you were expecting was simply because of, well, not simply, we had the 3 arrows and the Celsius contagion event, but then more importantly, we saw the equity markets, near term or possibly, longer term or long-term bottom around that time. And remember, we got that 9.1 CPI print. I mean, you know, we were in real time. This is the analysis that we viewed it, that was probably going to be the hottest print for a while. And then when the next one came off at 8.5%, like the rally just continued a little bit. I think that's being reflected in that big move off. Risk started rallying, and Ethereum is still that faster boat. And it really, it just, as risk started rallying, it outperformed Bitcoin. So I think it's personally more dependent on what happens next from our original, you know, start of this conversation with the macro. And if we're going to see, as a lot of people obviously hold the prevailing thought, that we're going to take out these June lows and it's going to happen, you know, sometime before the end of the year, then, you know, then we're going to see that Bitcoin dominance against specifically versus Ethereum and everything else really pick up. But maybe not if the rally does continue to just, you know, to almost against everyone's, you know, intuition, continue to rally over here into the year end, then we might see something different. I think, you know, one thing that I've learned is at this point, I always want to know where I'm wrong, because generally I have a pretty good view of the market. So it's almost more helpful for me to know where I'm wrong. So in that chart you were showing Ethereum, Bitcoin, right? Where are we wrong? Where are we not seeing that second distribution take place?
Well, I think the other way you might look at it, for like if you put on your bullish glasses, I guess.
Yeah.
So maybe I should, you know, just quickly show it from maybe a slightly different perspective, right? Like if I were to say, well, what happens if by the end of the year Ether Bitcoin is at like 10% or something?
It seems clear when you show it to me. It seems way too.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you look at it like this and say we're just some like ascending triangle or something, right? And it's building up to some massive breakout, or, you know, like after a successful ETH merge. But perhaps it's not so clear. Like maybe it comes down first and it makes everyone think that it's having that drop, that it is seems like a more likely thing. And then maybe it breaks out in early 2023.
Or take it further. No, I'm gonna take it further. What you just did, if it does break out to the upside, then I'm gonna focus on that bottom trend line, because if that's just liquidity grab and then we reverse the other way, then I want to know where I'm wrong. I'm being wrong the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I will say if it breaks up here, if it comes back up to like, you know, the 10 to 15% range, I would
then hold your initial thesis still like in play, but just now be aware for when that comes back into play.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if it broke out to the upside, at that point I would probably feel compelled to offload more ether back to Bitcoin than I already have, right? Like, so like I've already offloaded some ether to Bitcoin, but I still have a decent amount of ETH, because I want to have some in case I'm wrong, right? Like I'm hedging against being wrong.
Right.
The only way I feel like I would sell more ether back to Bitcoin is if we get another spike up, you know, like if we really go up and push the limits. It's hard for you. I think it'd be so hard for me to hold through that without, you know, without ultimately taking some off the table. So we'll see. But you're right. I mean, it almost seems too obvious that this is what's going on the Ether Bitcoin pair. So what am I, you know, what's being missed? I don't know.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's the way to look at it. And then also just trying to be as aware of our bias as possible. You always have a bias, and can't do anything about it. There's a reason you have a bias, but you know, I don't ever want to get caught leaning one way, you know, 100,000, 200,000 Bitcoin, it's a given, you know, so I want to always just be aware of whatever bias I hold at one time, so that.
But you'll see this is the same level too that we got rejected in mid 2018, like the Ether Bitcoin pair, right? Like this is, I mean, it's the exact same, you know, the exact same level, right? That's what
I see it. I mean, it's as clear as day.
Yeah.
It also is a different market. You talked about the fundamentals being drastically different. ETH is becoming a different asset in a week.
It is, but the question I think that becomes is that a good thing if we're going into like a longer, deeper recession? And is it a good thing with more regulatory uncertainty coming our way? I don't know if it's a good thing. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that's a big, I mean, it's true. There is the whole worry that then makes it a security, but at the same time, you know, just assuming that the merge goes well, and then all of a sudden there's a lot of massive momentum towards Ethereum as far as narratives, and then like all of a sudden energy usage, and then like a direct attack on Bitcoin. And it's just, you know, it's complicated, and it's important just to be mindful of you know, there's a lot of a lot of things that point to this momentum for the time being could actually favor Ethereum as well.
Yeah, I mean, I will be the first to admit that I did not think it was going to rally for the last 2 months. I mean, I thought May was it. Like, I mean, and that was why I traded it. I mean, back in May, when before the drop to 0.049, like before that drop when it was at 0.075, I was like, it's done. You know, like, it's just, this is it.
You were all over it. Yeah, it was a good timing.
And it worked. My only regret in that trade is that I shouldn't have been so greedy, and I probably should have traded some back. You know, I didn't actually trade any back, which is where I think I sort of got off sides a little bit. I should have been like, all right, well, the trade worked out. You know, Ether Bitcoin went down like what, 30% or something. Probably I should have hedged back the other way a little bit, but I didn't. And it was because I got so deterministic on Ether Bitcoin just going down. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see. We'll see if it plays out again.
What were you thinking in June when we saw that capitulation? You know, whether it's long-term capitulation or just, you know, midterm or, but
yeah, I mean, I think it's my initial thought was that we're at the range now where alts should start bleeding against Bitcoin. Is kind of like the 6K range of 2018. Yeah, is what I thought. But I mean, so far the dominance is putting in higher lows without stable coins, and with stable coins it put in a lower low. So I mean, there's a lot of mixed signals there, I think. I'm the way I do it, the way I manage this market is I'm heavy Bitcoin. I have a small amount of Ether, and I think my main strategy will be to reassess at the end of the year, because I mean, you know,
what's great about that, the way you're positioned is bringing it back to looking at this through the monetary base is, you know, it like alt season is not really until after they start expanding the monetary base, right? And Bitcoin during that accumulation phase, even if it comes way off its low, like that's when you want to be positioned into Bitcoin. And there's still, any way you look at it, seems to be a significant amount of time ahead of us before they return to balance sheet expansion. And then, you know, that's really when you want to be accumulating, maybe focus more on the alts right before.
Or remember, most altcoins did not bottom against Bitcoin until mid 2023, like 6 months after Bitcoin USD bottomed.
Into when?
Like summer of 23.
Yeah, 23.
Or sorry, summer of 2019. Summer of 2019 is when most altcoins.
Yeah, it was well after the bear market ended, right? And
so I mean, like, you know, something like that could happen again. Maybe Bitcoin bottomed already, and it goes on some crazy rally that no one expects, and it goes up, and altcoins don't, right? Or they don't go up nearly as much as Bitcoin does. I don't know. I feel like right now I sort of have my my maxi hat on in 2022, but once we get to next year, I'm going to take it off and I'll start accumulating altcoins again, more than likely, and just kind of wait. I mean, I think the narrative for next year is just going to be when exactly does the Fed pivot, you know, and so I think next year is sort of like what I think is the best time to accumulate altcoins. And by the way, I don't really consider ETH an alt. So when I say altcoins, I'm referring to everything besides Bitcoin and Ethereum. Though I know by the strictest definition, Ethereum is an altcoin. But when I say altcoins, I mean everything besides Bitcoin and ETH. So next year, I think is probably the time to accumulate altcoins. And then this year is probably just the time to kind of just ignore them and let them get chopped up because not only are altcoins bleeding against Bitcoin, I think they're also bleeding against Ether. Most altcoins are down a lot against Ether. So
hey, listen, when I look at the macro, 2023 is really concerning. It's usually when the end of the cycle is when the Fed starts cutting rates, and they need to cut them down to zero so they could do balance sheet expansion. And that's when you're going to want to be holding the king. That's when you're going to be holding.
Right. But then after, like, around that time though, I agree. We'll hit like peak fear. I mean, I think, you know, at that point, I will sometime next year, I think will be the time to go into altcoins. Probably not, you know, that doesn't mean, you know, you go all in January, right? Like, but look, I mean, like the next Bitcoin halving is out in 2024. Hopefully the Fed pivots before then. And we can have another bull market. Yeah, you know, we'll see.
Ben, great catching up. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.